Hi, my name is Sally Wood for Be Inspired, and today I'm going to be showing you how to cut a long cushion and create 2 accent cushions with it. I believe it's feathers. If I'm making 2, I don't have quite enough frill, so I've got to decide what to do with that, and also move the buttons along and hope that there isn't too much damage to the fabric, that it shows that they've been moved. So let's get on with it. Remove these buttons, and all I'm going to do is snip them off like that. I'll put them in a bag so I don't lose them. This end here has the stitching in, so I'm going to just see if I can undo some of those like that. Hopefully a little bit of a wriggle. Oh, there we go. The trim is always sewn onto one side, so all you've got to do is work out which side is the wrong side, and here we have it. I mustn't ruin the trim. If I ruin the trim, then I've got major problems on my hands. Oh dear, this is going to take me quite a while to do, partly because I'm becoming as blind as a blimmin' bat. Oh, there we go. If I can catch a couple of stitches, it will come apart quite easily like this. But I'm just going to have to be very careful because I don't want to cut into the fabric or the trim as I go along. Then once the pillow is removed, pull the cover inside out and you should be able to see the stitches to undo it a lot better, or at least I should be able to see the stitches a lot better, because now I can see the black stitches on the white background, and this is where it's been sewn on double. So I'm just going to pull on both of those like that, give it a little bit of a tug and it should start pulling apart. Then you can just undo your stitches, and I would undo them because I need to use all of this and readjust it so that it is 2 cushions the exact same size. I've got to be able to make this either go around 2 cushions or match it exactly so that it doesn't look like I've added a different fabric in there. This is an interesting project because of that, and you'll discover if you're matching a colour up, black is not black and white is not white. There's so many shades of black or white depending on the fabric type and where it was made. Once you've opened enough up, just peel the side with 2 rows of stitching on it like that and just pull them out. If you do it with the 2 sides, you're not having to go around twice, you just have to go around once to pull all of this stuff off. I'm just going to make my way around. Every now and again cut them so you can pull them out like that and keep the way clear so you can see what's going on. It's a lot quicker if you can just peel that open and you can more or less see what you're doing so that you don't tear the fabric on either side, just the stitches. One thing to realise when you're doing a job like this or a project like this is actually easier and cheaper for you to make it from scratch than it is to open this out and remake it. So, having said that, I actually don't charge twice as much, even though it takes me twice as long. I tend to believe that if I do this project for a reasonable price, then I'll get more work from this lady than if I charge too much. The other thing is that explaining to people that this kind of project is twice as long, they just don't get it. So, as I say, if you're doing something like this, just think about future projects rather than stiffing somebody. I even have the pillows to cut down, which I showed you in a previous video. Okay, so I've taken pieces apart and I am going to actually start with this one and find the center. So I've put the 2 ends together, and before I worry too much, there's a black square here and a white square here, so it wasn't actually even when it was originally made. It should have either had 2 white squares or 2 black squares on the top corner. So with that being said, I am going to cut down the center here, and I'm not going to worry that these are going to start with odd squares. This fabric's twisted slightly out of kilt. The other thing is that now I have a full square here and a half square here, so by trimming it back slightly, I'm going to cut the top off like this, and I'm going to do the same with the bottom. It should give me an extra small amount on the trim to use. Having cut back the top and the bottom and the side so that now I have full squares on all 4 sides, the trim has to go on equally. So if I chose to put the corners in, that means it's unequal. So the thing I've got to do is to fold this in half like this. Put a little cut there for the top or bottom. The same on this side, and then the same on these side lengths, so that when I work the trim out, it should go in quite evenly. or as evenly as I can make it. That doesn't look even at all. It's an upcycle, it's not going to be perfect. I'm going to treat these as the front side of the cushion. Now, this is the piece I'm going to use as the back. I have folded it in half, and I'm going to just make a nick on that side, open it up, so that my cut line is as close to equal down here. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off one side, and then when I put it in, then I can trim back the other, because it really doesn't matter. So long as I've got at least one straight edge along the bottom to work from, I can cut everything else back as I get there. So I've got those paired up. Now the last thing I need to do, there's the join. They've sewn it over and over, which is a bit irritating. So I'm going to take that out before I start. I'm going to undo this. I don't want to waste anything, even if it's only 1/4 of an inch. I want to keep as much of this as I can, because I really don't have very much to play with. A friend of mine gave me some black cotton to use on this, but if I can use all of the original without adding to it, that would be the best thing, because then I don't have to worry about one fabric fading quicker than another one. So at least this way all the fabric will fade at the same rate. I am going to have to work out equally 2 halves. Do not do it on the side that has been gathered. It's not going to be gathered equally. So I've put my 2 sides together like that, and I am just going to run along the top of this like this, so it's nice and even until I get to the other end. And this takes a little while because there's quite a long length, and it's quite fiddly to make sure that all of the ruffles are being pulled out evenly so that I can get to the other end and not skimp on one side compared to the other. Okay, so I've just come to the end and I'm going to mark it. That is my halfway mark. I have done it twice, and I will cut it now along that fold. Pull that out like that so it's equal on both sides. It just wants to go into the state it's been in, its remembered state that it's been for however long. Do that. Put one with one and one with the other. I've got my length here, and I'm going to mark it 1.5 inches either end. That's that side. And that's that side. I want to mark the center, so again I am going to roll all of this out till I find the center of this half. I should imagine that as it stands I'm about 10 inches short, so I've got to find that 10 inches from somewhere. I don't really want to add fabric if I don't have to, and it might not be as frilly as it was, but if I can still use this, then this is the better one to go for. As I say, people don't realise how much work and effort goes into a remake, especially if you've got frills and funny things. If it's just a case of cutting something in half, that's one thing. Here I am at my centre mark. I'll pull that out. Here's my centre. Pop that in there. So what I want to do is find the center from that pin there and that pin there, because that's my 1/4 mark. And actually 1.5 inches is a bit skimpy. It really needs to be 2 to 3 inches for an overlap, but I'm working with what I got. So I'm nearly at my 1/4 mark, and I'll put that in. It's a bit like doing a skirt, all this measuring out to make sure you got everything even. There's my 1/4 mark right here. Again, I'm going to mark that, and I'll do the same on the other side too. So I'm going to what they call dry test this. There's my mark. I'll pop that in the center like that and pull this out and up to the first 1/4, which is there. It looks like it's going to work. I want to try to make it even into that corner. So the next thing I'm going to do is on the cover, I'm going to make it into 8ths. So I'm going to run that edge along there like that till I get to there on the corner. It looks like that is my next mark. I'm going to put a pin in there. It's not very easy to do this. It's better if you've got really good firm edges. So there's my 8th mark. I am now going to measure an 8th mark on here. So there's my 1/4. I'm going to pull that out so that I can get it into 8ths, and it should go in more evenly. I don't want any bulking in any particular place. There's my 8th mark there. Pull that out and put a pin in along there. All I'm going to do, put that on there, just pin it. And I think what I need to also remember is this wasn't actually on the outside. It was about 1/4 inch in, so I'm going to pull it back just a little bit. They were very skimpy on how much trim they actually put in. And then that is going to match up with this one here. And when I sew it in, it should match up better. So take that pin out and pop that in there like that. That one can come out. This one can come on around the corner and hit my quarter mark here, and I'll pin that into place, and I'll just carry on going around. I've pinned it into all of my quarter marks and all of my eighth marks. The only thing I haven't done is put this into place. This is the last piece I'm going to do. It's a little bit tight in places, but I've still got a ruffle, which is the main thing, and it's still evenly ruffled, which is even better. Line up this fabric. I am going to pull that around, remove that pin, and pull it in like that. So it's actually, this runs parallel now, and the halfway mark is there. So I'm going to start just over halfway and then easing it in a rounded shape. My stitch length is on a number 5, it's a straight stitch, and now I'm going to start. I'm going to pull it in to just under the 1/2 inch mark because I need to sew on the outside of that. So I'm going to leave a little gap, maybe an 1/8 of an inch, run the outside of this foot along the base of the black frill, so it gives it about 1/4 of an inch. Now I'm pulling from the first pin out so that that will go in nicely. Any threads, pull them out as you go and try to make that as even as possible. Always put your frill on top as well, by the way. Try to make sure your frills are going up and down, not crossways. And because this frill's been used before, it's going to wander a little bit more in and out. It's not going to be as straight as if it was brand new. So just make those little adjustments as you go. I'm coming into this corner and I'm pulling some of the pleats towards the corner. Not too many because I do want it to be pleated. And as I get to the corner, pull it in like that, still keeping the fabric as placed as evenly as you can. What I'm going to do is a little bit of a rounded corner. Now if I do a rounded corner, it means it's not going to be quite so bulky in the corner, but you can also push some of those pleats into the corner like that, so it's actually quite full of pleats. And I'm just going to come on round, rotate it, see if I can pull this out, because now you can see it's the bottom fabric is quite wrinkly in comparison to the top, so I've got to pop that into place, and I'm going to start sewing like that so it's nice and flat. I'm going to take hold of this side of the pleat here, pull it out, and then sew. I have to break some of the original stitching like that, then I can ease some of this into place. There we go. By doing that, I can now move that into where it needs to go. I'm going to carry on sewing to my quarter mark. The quarter mark has to be where the quarter mark is. I don't want that moving very much. When I get there, take the pin out because it needs to be moved into line a bit better. There we go. When we get there, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to cut some of these ruffle threads, and that will ease that. You notice I'm not just pulling it, I'm kind of wriggling them into place, and I need to make sure I go around this top corner, so I need to pull it in slightly towards the top. And now I'm going to just carry on sewing. Now where that goes in, I'm going to pull that out so it doesn't get caught in. Try to make it as even as possible as I go up to the top. Any ruffles that are pleated over or caught in like that, make sure that they come out so you don't sew them in by mistake. It won't look so good. I'm going to pull some of that into the corner like that so I can go around evenly. I'm going to carry on like this all the way around this one and the other one so that they look identical. Just coming down the last part, I cut this back so I can see the raw edge. I have a pin here which needs to line up with that there, and I am going to just sew towards that. So I might have to push some of these pleats back into position because I don't want them all coming out. As I get closer to the halfway mark, which is here, keep everything up and straight like that. Then as I come to this halfway mark, I am now going to pull this into position like that. Now I need this raw edge into my seam, so I'm going to just pop that there like that and sew across. Make sure that's right into the new seam. When that's pulled open, there'll be a slight difference in height, but not very much. That is acceptable. Now I am going to pop right sides together. This is where I've got my join, so that's bottom, and I'm going to match up that to about 2 inches because putting that new cushion in is going to be a little bit difficult. I am going to match the outside raw edges up to the 1/2 inch mark. The stitch length is on a number 3.5, and I'm going to do forward and reverse. And here is my first rounded corner, and all I'm going to do is go around that corner as close to those stitches as possible. If I do that, I'm unlikely to cause the trim to go in a funny way. Straighten my 2 raw edges out. Now, on the side that has the ruffle, just give it a little bit of a tug, not too much. You tend to find that it goes in slightly tighter. It's only the way the ruffles are. Then I'm going to just sew on up with my 1/2 inch seam allowance to the top. Just try to make it as even as possible. Don't stretch it too much though. And keep those raw edges as even as you can. If you feel that your ruffles are moving too far, because as I say, they are pre-used, push them back with your fingers and they should hold a bit better. If anything, go underneath and do that. There we go. And then I'm coming to my next corner. Now I didn't cut this back, so I'm just going to pull that out like that and round. Hold on to that side and this side. It looks like I'm going to just come in to this side of those stitches. This is just pulled all the way underneath there. So if I do that, you can see that's all pulled in. So I need to undo into that corner and start again. Not uncommon. So I've slotted the fabric back underneath and I am pushing all of this trim into the center. I thought I had it on the previous turn, but it obviously wasn't far enough in. And even if this wasn't reused trim, that happens so often anyway. I'm also going to bring the outside edge up to this folded area of the fabric, and I'm going to re-sew it, pulling that around. There we go. Looks like it's going in better this time. Keeping this raw edge on that folded edge, it might give me a little bit extra on the other side, but it'll be fine. Give it a little bit of a pull, but not too much because you don't want to overstretch the fabric, and sew into place. I'm able to keep this little red line just to the inside of the black stitching, and that gives me a perfect seam. It's also close enough to the old seam that it shouldn't adjust any of the frill on the other side. Make sure that all of that is out because I don't want to catch that underneath. I can feel the pleats underneath my fingers and they all seem to feel more or less straight. Now coming into this corner, looks like all of those are going into the centre, which is good, so just double check and go around. Try to make it as smooth as possible. It's not always easy when you've got trims under there. And again, as I come around, I'm going to pull the top fabric just a little bit. This is all under here, so I've got to make sure that's all going into the centre of the new cushion. Open up that crushed seam and then on down. If I have to make alterations, I can. All I'm doing is I'm holding onto this sewn side and just smoothing it across so it doesn't move too much, and adjusting those under there. Hopefully all of that effort will keep everything where it needs to go. I'm just going to work my way down into that bottom corner. The trouble is you line it up and then you have to reline it, so just take your time. Time, patience, and above all, attention to detail. If you don't pay attention to your detail, you'll never have good products. It'll always be scrappy. And I've got to make sure this looks as good as new, which is awkward because it's not. It's been well used. So that's going to be a bit tight on the bottom, but it'll be fine. It'll work in to where I initially cut back. Just make sure all of those are going into the centre like they should. Straighten it out. I am going to just go along about 2 inches. Yeah, that's plenty on there. It's only being hand sewn in. It's not like there's a zip going in. And then I'm going to do forward and reverse. And that's that one done. Now I've got to do the other exactly the same way. That's actually not too bad. It's a bit skimpy, but it'll be fine. I'm just going to trim back the excess fabric like this. Turn the cushion, cover the right way round, and check that there's no stitching showing on either side. And as you go, you can pull out any loose threads or trim back any threads if they need to be trimmed back. That, you see, that comes out in two places. I will go round again when I'm putting it on the cushion, so I'll usually miss something. Not bad for a redo at all. I think she'll be pleased with that. I have actually done something I don't usually do, and that is to wash these. And I did it because I knew that this cotton fabric, it's a cotton linen mix, will have shrunk up, and there is no evidence of where the pitting was from the original button. Now I know where that was. It was here. The original holes, this one's closed up completely, that one's got a slight mark on it, which I might be able to get out. On the back here, I actually, maybe that was it, but I'm really not sure on that one. And the same here. I would think this is where the original button was. It's slightly different shade, but again, on this side, I have no clue. So by doing that, it's shrunk it up and it's going to look a lot better on there. The only thing now is to iron it. So I'm going to nip next door and get an iron I can borrow and make that look really pristine. I'm pressing this up so it looks nice and flat. It also freshens the fabric up. It's really weird how that happens. Put that down here, and here is the new seam. I know it is fluffed up, that's because I washed it. I'm just going to bring that into line with my stitches here. Try to keep it as straight as possible and then just press that into position. You'll find it a lot easier for sewing if it's already pre-pressed. Try to smooth out the transition from where it has been sewn to where it will be sewn. Sometimes it gets a bit rucked up under there, so just pull that out flat too and work all the way along like that. And I know I've left the iron on there, but this is a cotton and this is only on polyester, so it shouldn't burn. Is a really bad habit that I acquired many years ago. Press that in. Oh, here comes the steam. Good. Now it's a little bit wonky here, so I might have to re-sew that in, but I hopefully won't need to. I know it's not quite in line with here. Bring that down just a wee bit. Roll it into place. So here I'm just working on the ruffles like this. Just make sure that they all are out and roughly not pleated. There you go. Some of these are a little bit crushed. So I'm giving this a good steam on this side. In a minute I will turn it over and make sure I'll give it a good pressing from the other side too. So just work around a ruffle and then, as I say, do the other side. They always look prettier if they're well steamed, and pull it around so you can get just to the outside edge. This too is cotton, so I could do it on a higher temperature if I wanted to. Be able to see any threads and pull those out as I go. Any dust, I can pull that off too. When you work on things, you don't realise how much lint there is, and feathers always leave bits. So hopefully that's nearly all done. So what I'm going to do before I put the new cover on is mark the centres. And I'm going to guess that the centre is probably around about there. I'm going to pop that pin on that side, going that way. And then I'm going to put this across like that. Another pin acrossways like that. I've gone all the way through to the other side. I'm going to use my thicker pins like these ones. Where it crosses, I'm just going to put a pin on the top layer all the way through like that. Flip it over. And I'm going to put my pin down like that through everything. Pull my pins out like that. And this here is my center mark for the reverse side. And I'm also going to put a pin all the way through like that. And hopefully neither one is attached to the other. Always double check, and those do come away. So now my centre is marked. I'm going to put this inside like this. Once your insert is in, make sure all the corners are filled, all the sides are filled. Come to the opening here, start pinning that shut. I usually go from one end to the other end and ease it in. Push that one in like that. These can be adjusted, but if you start one end and work across, you sometimes end up with gaps. If you do alternate ends, you'll get it in more evenly. Try not to pin yourself, it hurts. Any stray ends, make sure that they're inside. And if your fabric isn't rolled in properly, don't worry, you can correct that later as you work your way across, sewing it shut. Alterations can be made. This is quite a tight fit actually. It was tighter than I thought it was going to be. I did take some fabric off the cushion covers, so I shouldn't be that surprised that it's a tight fit. Now, as you can see, it's a little bit gappy You can see my threads from the other side, but all of that will be hidden when I've sewn it in. I can't see the black on black, sew it in a different colour, and then I know to hide all of that and it'll be even. I'm actually going to remove the first pin. I am going through some of the ruffle on the back. The reason is sometimes the knot will pull through a fabric that has a looser weave. I'm just going to go into the back, across a couple of stitches, and then into the top of the fabric. Unfortunately, I have a cat who is smarming up against the bottom of the camera. So I'm sorry, he's being bad. Bad boy is on the floor. And then I go opposite through the trim just above my stitching, and then immediately opposite and into the fabric. And I'm going to do that all the way across. Now, because I can see where my stitching is, I'm going to go behind the stitching. Trouble is I can't see where this is. Okay, so that's actually opposite. It won't matter if it shows through because it is right above where it's sealed on the other side. And then here is my thread here, so I'm going to come opposite like that and across. Make sure all the loose ends are in. Where that is, I'm going to go across just above my original stitching. Make sure you get enough. You don't want to just have one stitch because sometimes it pulls through. Work out where your stitch is like that, and then across again and into place. Make them about 1/4 of an inch. The reason is I usually get them in the right place on the opposite side because I can judge where that is, and then it all goes in quite smoothly. It's slow progress, but it will get there. And it will hold it really nicely and nobody will know where the stitches are. See, he's coming up here to be irritating now. You are a pest. So, as I say, that is how I do my stitching. I will not do this on a sewing machine because there's too much bulk with the feather insert and it would just not look very pretty. So I am going to work my way all the way along here. Now, if you look on this side, you can't see where I stitched it. It's evenly done. Now all I've got to do is put the button in. Because the buttons are like this and they go across, I'm going to put them across on here. The first thing I'm going to do is to measure all the way across to the other side from the stitch line to the stitch line. When I've done that, I'm going to just fold my tape measure in half. This is a really good thing about these ones. And put a crease in it. Where the crease is where I'm going to put the center mark across. So pop that back there, and it is here. So I'm just going to pop my mark acrossways like that. It might not be the same on the other side, so I'm going to turn it over and measure from the stitch line to the stitch line. And this one is a little bit wider, but I don't even have to do the maths, it comes to here. So I'm going to take this one out here because I know that this up and down is the correct place, and I'm just going to put that here. Now I have my centers marked evenly on both sides because the first one was really to see more or less where the center was. I've got some cording here and I'm just going to make sure that it's going to go through the center with a little bit to spare. So I usually put it down to the counter and double it over, and that should be plenty for this. And then I have a lovely long needle here which I am going to find the eye of the needle and pop it through. Sometimes the cording is a little bit wider than the eye of the needle, so you have to crunch it through and then just pull it through. The front of the pillow, I'm going to go through one side of my pin, which means the other side of the pin I'm going to take out and just pop through as far as it can go, and then down here. I'm going to push that to this side of this pin here. So I'm going to take that one out and do the same. I'm just going to pop that back in here. I can see where the hole is that I've just come out of. And sometimes takes a little bit to get it where you want it. Push it through. And the eye of this needle isn't so big, so it's a real struggle sometimes to get it all the way through. But don't pull it all the way through. Just pull it so far. Turn it back over. Attach your button, and then put the other side through the eye of the needle. I'm going to put that where my pin is, so I'll remove that pin into here, and then take the other pin out and aim your needle to where that is. And as I say, it might take a couple of times to get there. I'm going to just pull that through. pull that like that so it's flat, and then put the thread through like that. All I'm going to do is tie this off. I'm doing the usual over and under, pull that in. Now all I did was I gave a quick push down and a pull. I don't want it to be touching on the other side, it's just as an accent. I've got my other one here to compare to. They look about even. Once I'm happy, I'm going to take the threads to the other side like that, tie it, and then back round to this side and tie it. But on this side I'm going to tie it again like that, and then I'm going to go back round to this side and tie. I probably overkill actually. And then I go 1, 2, 1, 2, and I'm going to cut my threads back so nobody can see them. So now I've got 2 matching cushions, and I think they've turned out quite nicely. Thank you for joining me on this project. I would say a short project, but it ended up being quite long. The original ruffle I managed to get around both cushions, and it still looks quite full, so that's a plus. The feather cushion needed to be dealt with and cut in half. That always takes a while to tighten those stitches and make sure that works. But I think the lady's going to be really pleased with this. My friend's picking it up at the weekend for her. If you want to hear more from me, please subscribe, hit the bell button. A few thumbs up would be absolutely lovely, and then I know how I'm doing. And in the meantime, see you later. Take care. Ciao. Oh, you wicked child. Completely on both of these. We went round all 4 sides. Really? What's wrong with you lot? Come on. Give me a break.